May I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Real Gaijin, unveiling the real Japan, an American expat's inside look. Now it's time for another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts. Summarized podcast.
All right, it is time to go. So,
Let's do it.
first of all, my name is Mark Kennedy. I'm the host of Real Gaijin, including the Ask Me Anything podcast, which we're going to do for the second time today with a wonderful guest. First of all, I need to apologize. Last week we had a little bit of a technical snafu and had to reschedule, but we are back. Everything's working. It should be just fine. So please feel free to put comments, questions in there, and we'll try to answer them at the very end. But first, it's my pleasure to introduce a wonderful speaker today who has actually been in the business of being a freelance writer for decades. Now, she's still young, but she has a lot of experience. This is Louise George Kittaka. And before I let her say hello, I just want to say the shoe is on the other foot because, believe it or not, about a year and a half ago, Louise interviewed me and one of my longtime college friends when we did a long-distance cross-country bicycle ride across Japan. And Louise was a reporter for the Japan Times. She writes extensively for the Japan Times on a routine basis, also works for BBC, the Michelin Guide, and many other publications. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Louise George Kittaka.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So Louise, you are a fellow real gaijin like me. So you are a foreigner living in Japan for a very long time, and I suspect it will be permanent. Please tell us, how did you get interested in Japan? What led you here?
Sure. Well, yes, I have been here for decades. It sounds really, really old when you put it that way, but I came when I was, first time I came when I was 18. I came on a working holiday. I was in my second year. I went to college a little early. I was only 17. So I was still pretty young when I came the first time, very naive. It was the end of the bubble era. Everyone was treating me very nicely because I was this young, cute woman. And I had 2 years of Japanese under my belt. So I could speak reasonably well. Probably too formal to be really close friends with people and not formal enough for a business situation, but I could get by. I worked in a coffee shop in the Ginza and stayed with a friend of my university professor. So I had like a homestay and was working. So it was a nice introduction. And then 2 years later, I came back when I was 20 after graduation. And I worked for a very small Japanese firm who had an office in Japan and they were going to build an office in New Zealand. It was actually a sawmill. I was working in the office for a Japanese-owned sawmill. If you can think of anything a little bit more random than that. So their Japanese office was in Hiroshima, in a small town called Fukuyama, or near there. And my Japanese husband is from that area. He's from another small town in the same area. I met him at a Christmas party, and we met at Christmas. We were engaged by New Year. It was very quick. The path of true love doesn't always run smooth. We had a year apart because I went back to work for the company as planned. They were not too happy about the idea of me quitting. So it gave the families time to get used to it. And we saved up for our wedding. We had 2 weddings, one in New Zealand, one in Japan. And by the time I was 22, I was pretty much full-time here. So
Wow. That's great. So you initially got into the writing business, writing on paper by making paper.
Well, it wasn't paper. I think they used
or logs.
They used the logs more for construction, so it wasn't quite as romantic as paper.
Okay.
It was a very sort of practical use of the wood. But I'd always loved to write at school. I enjoyed English very much. But by the time you get to high school, English is very much about, oh, here's a Shakespeare play, or here's this novel by so and so, and we're all going to read this, and you're going to write about that novel, your reflections on Shakespeare. I love the creative side of writing, but I didn't really enjoy the you have to read this novel side of it. So when I got to university, I would have liked to have done English, but I knew that the way it was taught in university wasn't my true love of English. Plus, it wasn't probably very helpful for getting a job. Humanities, liberal arts were always a little behind, the sciences and business, even in New Zealand. So I thought something a bit more practical. I did a degree in economics and Japanese because at that time, Japanese was just becoming somewhat of the future boom language, or that was the impression that we were given as students. New Zealand was coming out of its affiliation as part of the British Commonwealth and was beginning to look more for markets in Asia. Europe and England were no longer buying so much of our milk. So we were turning to Japan as a trade partner, and of course tourism. It was the era when Japanese were beginning to go overseas in greater numbers. So in many ways, Japanese was a practical language to learn. I'd done French at high school, which was fine, but not very useful for a Kiwi. So I knew I liked languages. So I was pretty excited about doing Japanese. And when I came on working holiday, I loved it, luckily. So I was more, even more fired up about continuing to study. And somehow I ended up here and met my partner, and like many people, just here for work. Ended up being, I'm here permanently, and here I am.
Terrific. Terrific. So you told me before, when we were talking, when you interviewed me, that you had actually spent a little bit of time in the United States, right?
That is correct. My husband's company sent him to the US. He was working for an American firm at that time. I had joined a publishing firm in Okayama. People know it's Benesse. I was the first foreign employee at the company, first foreign full-time employee. I mean, in the corporate office. I don't mean in their, like, they do have English language things that they do, and they obviously hire native speakers for those things. But I was the first full-time non-Japanese employee at the corporate office in Okayama. So I was really enjoying that. It was a publishing company. I was really enjoying working in that side. I was in PR at that point for the president's office. Then we decided to move to Tokyo to see what was going on there. My husband got a transfer, went to work for the American firm. I transferred up with my firm and worked in the editing side for them, which was a good grounding in how to edit stuff and sort of look at other people's writing. But it was the educational publishing side, definitely not the media. And then out of the blue, his company said, "We'd like to send you to Buffalo." Well, they said New York, and I thought, okay, New York. Well, that could work. And he said, "It's not New York City, it's New York State." I'm like, "There's a state?" This is the 90s. Like, there's a state. Isn't that what they had before they built the city? Like Little House on the Prairie type of things. No, it's a city called Buffalo near Niagara Falls. I'm like, okay, well, I know Niagara Falls. And yeah, we ended up in Buffalo for 3 years. So
And which time of the year was that when you moved?
he went ahead of me. I did not want to give up my job and go, but we decided to start a family if we were going. So I was pregnant with our first child. So I went when I was 7 months pregnant, and it was December. So
Oh,
there was a lot of snow. At first, it was really beautiful, and we drove.
wow! Trial by fire or snow.
It
Very
was,
good.
yeah. But Christmas was nice, but then by January, I'm like, when does the snow end? So you're talking about Halloween to Easter for snow there, a lot of snow. But the people were very warm-hearted. The colder the place,
Oh,
the warmer the people, I say, and I think in that case it was very true. So
exactly.
older two children were born there,
Hmm.
and then I thought we were coming back to the US after 3. I went to grad school while I was there. I couldn't work on the visa I had, so I got a master's degree at SUNY Buffalo in intercultural studies, thinking it would help me market myself, when I came back to Japan. And then the company sent us to Nashville for his MBA.
Ooh.
So I uprooted myself again, and I ended up being a part-time researcher at Vanderbilt University. Anything to kind of keep my hand in, because in those days, I remember those days, Mark, in Japan, if you were a married woman with children and you'd left the workforce, it was very tough to get back in. And at that point, I was still thinking I'd want to get back into corporate work because I'd very much enjoyed my job. So, yeah.
And
So
then somehow you managed to go back to Japan, though.
after 5 years, we ended up coming back. We came back with 2 small people. So we'd gone as a couple, came back as a foursome. And within a year, we'd added 1 more. So
Ooh.
I'm now surrounded by, 3. I had 3 little ones under 6 at one point, and I started from zero. I really had to reinvent myself. So working in a corporate type job with 3 kids is, even now, I think it's pretty impossible. All the women I know who have full-time careers, they usually have 1 child, 2 at the most, and there's usually a grandmother or a mother-in-law, someone pretty much full-time on the ground, which I didn't have. My mom was in New Zealand, my mother in Hiroshima. So my husband was working all the hours that were available to him in the typical corporate situation. So I was really, on the ground with these 3 little people, and I had to pivot. So, kind of long story short, I freelanced. I mean, there's not much else you can do in that situation. Reached out to people I used to know, got a bit of work from my old company. My former
Mm.
boss, the working mom herself, she had one child. She
Oh,
was very
good.
sympathetic. She gave me a little bit of work here and there that, gradually mushroomed into other things. Editors know other people, and if you do a good
Mm.
job, they'll recommend you. I did a little bit of teaching in special ed on the side, which was not
All
something
right.
I knew much about, but I enjoyed it. They were really just looking for someone who would speak English and Japanese and work with the kids. And
Mm.
I did that for 19 years. And then I got into more
Mm.
like materials presentation. I was writing for the ACAN for different standardized English tests and exams. But all the time I was kind of reading the Japan Times and looking at articles and thinking, oh, I could have written that,
Mm.
but not knowing how to get into it. Uh, Always thinking, these people must know more people than I do. They must know more than I do. Um, and then I heard about a story that was too good to turn down. It was a woman who worked in the special ed realm as well, someone I knew, a German lady. And she had an interesting story to tell. She was a globetrotter with her own husband's company. I think he worked for JICA. And she taught special ed in 5 different countries on 5 different continents.
Oh.
And she worked with the expat community, not the Japanese
Mm.
community
Mm.
in Japan. Very interesting lady. Um, I thought there's a story to tell, and I wanted to get it out. So I contacted someone I know who wrote for the Japan Times, just and she said, "Yeah, I'll help you connect." At first, they're like, "Oh well, okay, we'll give you a trial." They liked the story, and from there, I was in, and that one
Ah,
connection got me in. You have to kind
right.
of be a little bit brave to jump in,
True.
pushy even, because editors don't often take they don't always take a gamble on someone they don't know. And I think
Mm.
there's other people who write freelance here as well, and they'll say that sometimes it's not the best writer, it's just who do you know, who you can connect with, and they say write about what you know. So a lot of
Yeah.
my early stories for the Japan Times were writing about the education system or the parenting
Mm.
experience through the lens of being a foreign parent in Japan, but a foreign parent who was in the Japanese community as well. My
Mm.
kids were in Japanese hoiku and they were in Japanese school. They did not go
Ah.
to international school, but I did have friends in that situation too. I was kind of straddling both, a foot in the international community and a foot in the Japanese community.
Mm.
So I was interviewing my fellow foreign moms about their experience, PTA, jiku. Sometimes it was more
Mm.
lighthearted things, Aisumi undokai, what do you put in your bento? How do you get a good spot? Uh, how do you take the best photos? That kind of thing. But a lot of it was quite serious topics like, juku. Do children need to
Mm.
go to juku? Is it a necessary
Mm.
evil or a stepping stone to
Mm.
success? Um,
So, Louise, may I just to interrupt for a
sure,
second?
sure.
Very interesting background, and it's great that you can explain so clearly how you got into the business, because I imagine a lot of listeners would be curious about that. I'm curious, though, for example, the decision that you made with your husband to send your children to regular Japanese school. How did you make that decision? What was behind that?
Wasn't really a decision that was made. It was just we never expected to send them to international school because we expected to be here. Um, Money, of course, was another thing. One
Ah.
child, possibly you could do international school. Two, stretch. Three, there's no way. And
Ah.
when my children were younger, there weren't these sort of, I won't say they're cheap necessarily, more economical choices. And nowadays there are, I think, quite a range of international schools. Some are smaller and there are scholarships and they might be more reasonable choice in terms of money. But if you've got 3 children, sending them to a regular international school will really cripple you financially. We just could not. We didn't entertain it though because we figured we're raising our kids in Japan. They
Hmm.
already had that bicultural background, so they needed something to root them in the Japanese society. So and just having friends in the neighborhood, going to the local school seemed to be the best way to do that. From junior high, they did go to a school a little bit out of our city, on another city in Japan, sorry, in Tokyo, which had an international program. It was Japanese school, but it had a long history of returnees. The founder
Ah.
himself had been overseas and started the school for his own children, really. It was started before the war, actually. He wanted a school where their English would be honored, but they'd also get help to catch up in the Japanese they'd missed. So this was way before it became trendy to have an international stream like a lot of schools have
Yeah.
nowadays. It
Yeah.
was pretty much a returnee friendly school. And they ended up going there for junior high and they were able to do English at a higher level, which was very helpful. But when it came to high school, we decided that uh, it might be a better fit for our oldest to go to New Zealand.
Oh, okay.
We had taken them, I had taken them every summer, which was the New Zealand winter, and they had gone to school there. So instead of just being at home for a month at my parents' house,
Sure.
our son started going to the school when he was 5, and the school were very up for that as long as he spoke English, which he did. And then our younger two in turn did that as well. So our oldest in particular, we knew he would be very much at home in New Zealand. He loves sports. He was very outgoing, very friendly. Um, so we talked about it with my parents. They offered to host him. So he went to high school in New Zealand. And if you offer it to one, you need to offer it to the rest. It wasn't necessarily you have to go, but we offered it to his 2 younger sisters, and they in turn also decided they wanted to go. So all 3 ended up going to high school in New Zealand. The older 2 stayed with my parents. The youngest one boarded. The school was a boarding school. They were getting a little bit old to host the teenagers. They'd
I
already
understand.
had 6 years of teenagers, so they wanted to downsize their house. That was the practical reason behind that. So the youngest ended up being a boarder, which was a great experience for her. She was able to do many things because she was right on campus. But it also gave all 3 a shared background. They'd all been through the Japanese schools, junior high, and then from high school, they all attended the same high school. So they've got that shared sort of background, which I think is really nice. Had one gone to international school or one gone to New Zealand and 2 stayed in Japan or vice versa, there would have been a little bit of a division, I think, in their
That's
education.
true. Very interesting.
Yeah, all 3 went to university overseas as well. The oldest is now in the US. He's working there, and he and his wife live in San Francisco. And then our 2 girls are in New Zealand. One is recently married and working, and the youngest just graduated, about to graduate from university and start her first job there.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Accomplished family.
We missed them, but all 3 have found their careers, and all 3 have found success in the areas they want to be in. And I also would say that for my daughters especially, it's given them another model of being a young woman in society. Wonderful as Japan is in many ways, one thing where it does still lag, and we know this, you know this, I know this, every parent knows this, every working woman knows this, every mother knows this. It's still not always equal in terms of opportunities in the workplace for women. There are many talented young women in Japan doing great things, but it is still difficult to get your foot in certain career areas. And if you do, it's very difficult to then combine that with raising a family. There are many practical issues that we don't really have time to go into here. But for my daughters, I'm glad they were able to see another model of perhaps being a young woman in society and seeing women, in the workplace and respective careers, which probably would not have happened had they stayed in Japan. They were in a more arts and orientated type of school. They probably wouldn't have gone into the science and legal, the medical and legal fields, which they are currently.
Well, that's a very good point. Very timely, of course, with International Women's Day being still today, and for some of our viewers,
okay, that's right.
Given the time difference.
There we go.
Now, over the years, especially since you've written about these issues extensively, have you seen some changes, possibly in a positive direction here in Japan?
Yes, I definitely think there have been positive changes. When my children were small, putting them in daycare was a little bit unusual still, especially I put my youngest in when she was 2 months old, because in those days, if you were a freelancer, that was the only way to get your child into daycare. If you waited till they're 1 year old, all the full timers like the nurses, teachers, full time company employees would come back from the maternity leave and get the spots. So people like aghast, you're putting this tiny baby. We actually already applied when I was still pregnant with her. She was born in January, so I was already applying. You haven't even had the baby yet, and you're putting the baby in daycare. Yes, because that's what I had to do to get a place in daycare, which once you're in is fantastic, by the way. Japanese hoikuen is amazing. But yes, I've seen some changes. There are more fathers, obviously, coming home earlier. I think the pandemic did a lot to help that too. Let's face it, working home. A certain cohort anyway, perhaps white collar workers. I don't think that's necessarily the case for those in service industry jobs or those in perhaps jobs where they have to be with the customer. Clearly not everybody could benefit, but in general, I mean, younger fathers, they want to be with their children. This whole dad just comes home and has a drink and goes to the bath and goes to bed. That model of parenthood, that model of marriage is gone. You can't have that anymore. The stay home mom, dad, salaried dad model is fast ending here. That's obviously a social and economical issue, but so I think things are changing. The whole idea, though, when the government is still pitching, working mothers, having babies as a woman's issue. I think the government is out of touch. Let's face it, the government is mostly older people. When younger people in the government try to put their hand up and say something, they're often kind of squashed. It's older men who probably went through the system with having a stay-at-home wife, who are still making the policy decisions. And a lot of older people, of course, support those, and the government are supported by the elderly population, so they tend to make decisions that benefit the older generation. So I think there's definitely a lack of in touch awareness of what's going on with younger families. But I do see younger families, spending more time together, putting their children first, or putting their time with their children first. I think every father wanted to do his best for his kids.
Wow, yeah.
It's tied to, I work for the company to support you guys, but then if you're never around for your children, the children and the wife don't always see it that way. So I think things are changing, but there's still definitely a lack of support and awareness for women in many situations, because the bosses are men. I think when the younger women come forward and step up and then do perhaps become the next generation of women bosses, we may see things change. It's difficult when the policymakers are not women. We need more women in policy. We need more women in positions when they can then influence the younger ones coming along as role models. And that's not just Japan, of course. I mean, I don't want to say this. And we see that in the US, we see that in New Zealand. But I think both our home countries are probably a generation ahead.
Probably. Okay, well, that's good. And let's go back to your career, though. I'm curious, given how you have 3 children in various stages of schooling, how did your own career blossom at that point?
Well, to be quite honest, a lot of my work was done at night. There was a lot of slaving over a computer, especially in the early days when I was trying to establish myself as a freelance writer. I had all the educational publishing work. I was going into several offices for that. I had the work I'd mentioned at the special ed school. I also started doing some university teaching part-time. I had all these jobs I was kind of cobbling together. Well, I used to say a jack of all trades, Jill of all trades, but now I look back and think versatile, very open to new opportunities, can turn a hand to anything. Women tend to put ourselves down, oh, I just do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, whereas men would say, well, I do this, this, and this. As women, we need to own that. I was flexible. I was versatile. I took every opportunity that's presented to me. Sometimes they worked for too little money, looking back, but it was an opportunity to get my foot in a door in a certain way. But a lot of the time I was I felt I wasn't full time and I wasn't stay at home mom either. I was kind of in the middle. And sometimes I got the best of both worlds. Sometimes I felt I got the worst, because I'd still show up at the PTA meetings and they go, oh, okay, you can volunteer, you can do something. Whereas the full-time moms might not come because they couldn't take the day off, or the full-time stay-at-home moms would have maybe more time. I sometimes wondered if I was, burning the candle at both ends and doing neither job very well. But, there's many models of being a mom. There's many models of parenting. You just do the best you can. And raise 3 great kids. So, no one's in therapy. So.
Okay, that's good. Except your
We're
husband.
still here. We have a great relationship, At the time, you just do the best you can. And I think for me, the most important thing was connecting with other moms. I about the parenting thing, but of course you talk to your husband a lot, but in Japan it doesn't always work that way when he's home so late and you're tired and grumpy. I did so many different Naraigota with my kids, different things they wanted to try. I try to be open to all that, things that would support their English. We did Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts at the local international school. We always did reading in English, even up to middle school. I was still reading to them at night. I do one by one, so each child had time with me. They're 3 years apart in school, so each had a different bedtime. I had this big routine that I did every night with them, reading and doing English, and the days were long. And then sometimes, by say 9:30, 10, by the time the last one was in bed, then I would be on my computer till 1 or 2 in the morning. Not a lot of sleep. That's
Mm.
probably true for many working moms. So I would say there's many similar stories out there with people who could say, yes, that's how it was. Looking back, I don't know how I did it sometimes, but I just did. I think because I was probably a younger mother, maybe that helped. My husband is a great provider. He's been a great dad, but he wasn't there much. If he's home at 11,
Mm.
12, how much
Oh,
housework can he be expected to do?
oh,
He'd be out the door the next morning at 6:30 or 7.
oh.
So he was also working very hard. Um, One thing that also I should mention is he was away for 5 years. He didn't live with us for 5 years.
Ah,
That was a decision we made. His company transferred him,
oh.
and we could have gone, but we did
So
not.
this is tanshin funin.
We did the tanshin thinning, yes, within Japan.
And maybe you
Uh,
could explain what that is for
okay,
everybody.
tanshin thinning basically it's translated often as business bachelor, because in the past it was usually men that did this, but it means living away from your family for your job, which is very common in Japan. Um, uh, I actually wrote about this recently for the Japan Times, but I interviewed a couple of women who were the ones that left for various
Ah,
reasons. Um, Japanese firms tend to transfer people around. There are other reasons, obviously, for maybe a good opportunity came up, so you left, or you didn't want to give up your job and your spouse was sent somewhere. But in general, Japanese firms have kind of taken the idea that the company will be able to send you wherever they please, and then your family will follow, or if they don't
mm,
follow them. So he was given the opportunity to bring us, of course, but
mm.
I didn't want to restart all over again. I had
Yeah.
starting junior high at that point, one in primary school and one in her last year of daycare. So the youngest was 5, going on 6, and he was away for 5 years. So she was 5th grade when he came back.
Mm.
Um, but it was within Japan. It was only a couple of hours away. It would have been a 2.5-hour commute had he stayed, which is much too much. So he left and lived by himself in an apartment, and we would go and stay with him on the weekends. So the
Oh.
boot was on the other foot. We'd go and stay with him in his nice clean apartment, and the kids would be, "Hey, don't touch that! Like, clean that!" I was like, "Oh, yeah, now you're stepping into my life. This is how it feels." It was actually quite fun. So he had a one-bedroom apartment. We would have the bedroom. The kids would sleep on futons piled in the
Wow.
living room. And then that got extended by 2 more years. He was sent for another place for 2 more years. So we ended
Oh,
up for 5 years. I won't say it's ideal. I mean, I'm not sure that everybody would cope with that, but we did. And he came home most weekends, which is really really the
oh,
key.
okay.
Um, and had we not been able to see him that often, it might have been tougher. But
Yeah.
on a practical level, he wasn't home very much during the week anyway. So when he
Ah, all right. When he was working Tokyo. Okay.
yeah,
Well,
and my
that's a real experience. Wow, that's a
yeah,
long time to do
but
that.
it also taught me that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? Um,
Well, true.
I was handling everything anyway on the weekday, so I just tapped into that. It makes you very strong. You have to be when you have kids in Japan, I think, and you're trying to combine that with a career. I'm not trying to make it sound, like it was a hero or anything. It just what
Mm,
it was, and I'm not the only one. There are many stories.
sure. Sure. Well, it's great that you wrote about that. What are some other topics that you are particularly proud of writing
Uh,
articles about?
well, one getting back to the same topic, working moms. I wrote a opinion piece about being. I called it "The More Things Change, the More They Stay the Same." It was written in
Mm,
2019, about the time the scandal with the medical universities hit. I don't know if you recall, there were medical universities that had been exposed as cutting uh, women's applicants' grades, so that only
mm,
about a third of the successful applicants would be young women. It wasn't that
mm,
women were not doing well on the test; they were doing very well, in fact, outscoring men. So it would have been probably skewed to more women than men. But the university themselves decided they didn't want so many women in the medical schools, because they said women doctors tend to quit after they have kids or get married. They don't stay in the profession long enough. So let's artificially cut the numbers so we get more men. Well, is that not the problem with the system, not the young women coming
mm,
through? Again, policymakers, if you don't have women, married working moms, or just it could be guys as well, sympathetic to women's situation, but it tends to be that Japanese, older policymakers don't really think of it like that. They blame it
mm.
on young women not being committed, or uh, not being willing to stay in their profession if they have children. Well, the problem is systemic, not not
Right.
the but
Mm,
that was around that time, and I felt very strongly about that. So I wrote I think a pretty hard-hitting opinion piece, and it was very popular. It was, though, for a women's platform. It was for something called Savvy, which was published by G Plus
Oh,
Media.
yeah, yeah.
So I was kind of preaching to the choir a little bit. It did get picked up by their other media, though, and that was also a more widely read one. So yeah, it was
And
pretty.
how do you pick what you write about for these various publications?
Well, these days my work is sort of pivoted quite greatly to inbound travel writing, which is
Ah,
very big right now. So I don't get so much of an opportunity to pursue these sort of passion stories. And those stories also take a lot of the opinion pieces, obviously, mostly my opinion, but things for the media are more exploring a topic from various perspectives. I like to balance it. So you interview different people, you reach out to like maybe some experts in the field, often an academic or someone who's got some credentials, speak to other, not just the main person. You want to speak to different people in this with the same situation or come at it from different angles. So unless it's a straight interview with someone, I like to have, multiple voices in my pieces, which I
mhm,
is good. And those can take a lot of time.
mhm.
So the travel pieces are, usually, I wouldn't say quicker to write, but there's perhaps a trip involved, perhaps more in
Ah,
it if you like. Um, and I'm writing for different or for corporations, sometimes, well, corporate pieces, or content, what we call sponsored content, whether it's like the JNTO or perhaps a travel platform like Michelin or the BBC Storyworks, places like that. So they pay better, let's be
ah.
honest.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a balance though. But if there's a topic that I really do want to pursue, I'll do it for, I would do it for free, but I'll do it for a much.
Ah,
If it's something I want
great.
out there, someone's story, quite often a friend or someone, a friend of a friend, will have this compelling story they want to get out, and that can start me looking at it. I'm particularly interested, obviously, in women's issues, education
Mm,
issues, the foreign experience in Japan,
mhm.
marginalized people who don't have a voice, perhaps. Stories like your own, where you traveled with your friend around
Ah,
all of Japan. And I have to say, if people are not familiar with the story, Mark's friend was on a high wheeler, a very
yeah.
old-fashioned high wheeler. Mark was the support person; he was the wing guy on a normal bike behind. So that was the hook, traveling all over Japan on a high wheeler bike. So that was again through a mutual friend, wasn't it? Two mutual
That's
friends
true.
introduced us,
That's true.
two women in my community. So often it's connections, meeting interesting people like yourself, and going from there. But my thing is, everyone has a story to tell, whether it's a business side, whether it's a CEO of a company and I've been asked to write about them, or it's someone like you who's done something a little bit unusual. And then, of course, your own backstory was interesting, how you met your friend through college and stayed in touch.
Mhm.
There's always a story there. Um, Now and then I've done things which ended up being like McDonald's money. I did one, it was about a shelter, a Japanese animal shelter that turned into a hoarding situation. And it was horrible to write because I'm an animal lover myself, but I couldn't not write it. Once got my feet in, I couldn't not write it. So I think I ended up spending more time on that than any other story I've ever done. It was quite upsetting, but I was proud of it, and I got the side of the woman who I finally got in to see her and talk to her, because I felt I needed to hear her story as well as all of those who are against what she was doing and what it had become. I always think there's two sides, and you do need to try and get both sides if possible.
Very good, very good. So you mentioned a second ago connections and networks. Can
Right.
you told me before a little bit about how, for example, we were connected through mutual friends. You're a member of several networking
I
communities. Can you tell
uh,
us a little bit more about that?
sure. I guess probably the mainstay, that the biggest and most important connection for me has been with a group called AFWJ. Used to be called the Association of Foreign Wives of Japanese. It is now just
Ah,
goes by AFWJ because there are many people in there who are divorced, widowed. Um, there's people in same-sex marriages as well. So um, we've become a lot more, I think, inclusive of different people. We're not for everybody. It's a group that I joined when I was 22. Somebody
oh,
gave me a membership as a wedding gift. Actually, I was aware of the group before I joined. I'd reached out to somebody in the group for help before I got married. So I was aware of who they were. I was happy to join, and I've been in it since ever since then. So it's been over 30 years, without giving away my age, since I was 22 anyway. Um, so I've had some ups and downs. I was a president during the pandemic, which was not a good time to be president. It was
mm,
yeah, everyone was like had time on their hands, and people were worried and scared, and kind of a trial by fire, I have to say. But it's a group that's supported me through my journey as a young wife, working mother, now, at the other end with empty nesting. And I'm not heading to retirement yet, but my husband he's a little older than I am, so he's probably going to retire this year. So it's kind of been my anchor all the way through, even when I was in the US. And you don't get on with everybody who just because they have a Japanese partner, but you find your tribe, so to speak. And I've got friends in the group who are my mother's age. I've got friends in the group who are probably closer to my oldest child's age at this point.
Ah.
I think that's something that you're probably not going to get in general in society, because you sort of tend to hang out with people around your own age.
That's true.
Um,
Are you a mentor to some of these people?
I like to think so. I've certainly got mentors in the group. There are certainly older women in that group who are very dear to me, and I've also got women who I feel like a half a generation. So their kids are kind of between mine and me, and those women are kind of between my mum and I in age. Those intergenerational friendships are also very important, because it's not a big gap as a generation, but we can sort of see each other, and I've seen other people's kids grow up. I've seen their kids get married. I've seen some of these friends have grandkids now. We're not quite there yet. I'm seeing young women coming behind and facing some of the things that I went through with it when I was raising my kids or pursuing my career, or in our marriages, of course. Marriages don't always run smoothly. I've seen people go through one marriage and enter into a second, or go through a divorce or a separation, or perhaps their partner passed away and they've continued to build their life in Japan. So it's not all good times. There are many serious things that happen, but we have interpersonal connections. We have get-togethers in person. It's not just online. The group has been for actually it started in '69, so the group has been going on a very long time. It's not for everybody. Obviously people don't always find what they want in the group, but many do. So that group has kind of been I think my main form of community. But that said, I think it's also important to have non-foreign friends, Japanese friends as well. And I very much value my Japanese friends. I have some from before I got married, some who I've met, more of my journey as a mom. I started a playgroup when I moved it back to Tokyo from the US. And any efforts I put into that have been rewarded tenfold with the friendships I've made. Women married to perhaps foreign people, or women who have lived overseas for a while, but not necessarily. Some are just women I made friends with through school or through Hoikuen. So I think if you're in Japan and trying to raise your family in the Japanese community, having Japanese friends is super important. Especially, I would hasten to say, especially if you're the partner who is involved with the children. I mean, I know there are dads who are in that situation, but let's face it, it's usually the mother. And if you're a foreigner, a foreign mother raising children in Japan, you don't get it, because you weren't raised in that country, in that culture. So you really do need to have friends on the ground who can help you and support you. So
Very good.
I do value those friendships very, very much. Yes.
That's great. Well, by the way, to our listeners, we'll make sure to put a link into about that organization that you were referring to and other resources when we publish the recorded version of this.
Thank you.
That's great. And also, since we have a little bit of time, you touched on this very briefly, but now you're entering the stage of life, and I'm kind of right there with you, where you have an elderly parent that is not close by. And that's, I understand, another subject you've been writing about and experiencing firsthand.
Yes, I did. I wrote again, it was through Savvy Tokyo, actually. It was an opinion piece where I could write about my own experience. Just having elderly kids growing up, and then elderly parents in another country. And I think that's a topic that's not really explored too much. I have seen foreign friends go back to look after their elderly parent after an illness, or perhaps the dad or one of the parents passed away, so the other one was left vulnerable. There's many issues. It could have been a stroke. It could have been the death of a partner. It could have just been not able to cope in their housing situation, perhaps Alzheimer's. There's many things that can happen, but I've seen people go back for what was supposed to be a short visit turned into months, some cases years. They ended up staying there. I mean, the pandemic obviously had a factor in that. People thought they'd go for a few months and end up staying, finding another job there, and then not coming back puts strain on the marriage if there's a partner here, and perhaps children, still young adult children or teenage children in the home. If you are the only child, which sometimes they are, then there's nobody back there to support you. There may be other siblings, but then they might not be able to. They might think, oh well, you're working part-time, you can come back, or you're the daughter. Daughters often are the ones that step in. Sometimes the brothers have not been held to that to account. Sometimes there's disagreement over the best way to care for mum and dad. There's many issues that can come up. Even in the best case scenario, it's stressful. Luckily, I have a younger brother in New Zealand who is very hands-on. He lives quite close to my mom, so he helps. We lost my dad in 2019. They've been doing pretty well. They've been fine up to then, but I just think losing her partner and then the pandemic. My mom, she's fine mentally. She's very sharp actually, but she's just not as strong as she used to be. So even though she's doing okay at home with some support, there's still at the back of my mind, well, I need to go at some point. And obviously it's not fair on my brother to have the whole burden, but I'm here, so how much can I do? And when my dad was ill, I was going back probably every couple of months to see him, which was a lot of money and time obviously invested, but at the same time you want to be with your loved one before they pass. Once they pass, there's not much you can do. Saying I wish I had done so and so, it's not much you can
Okay, good.
yes.
Well, thank you for sharing that very personal information.
Yeah.
I'm going through the same thing right now. By the way, just to shift gears just a little bit, what about the outlook for the future, the role of non-Japanese resident foreigners? Do you think that, people like the two of us who've been here and are committed to staying here long term, you think there are more opportunities long term for us? Or what do you think? Do you think society's changing?
Well, gosh, that's a big, I think every
Big
situation.
question.
I don't know about you, but I think many of us, when perhaps we're raising our families or we're younger, we have this idea, oh, maybe I'll go back one day. I'm not sure.
Mm,
And part of that is because Japan, let's be honest, always treats us as somewhat long-term guests.
true.
By basis, we're still, unless we take Japanese nationality, even if we're on long-term resident visas here on a permanent resident, I'm sure you are as well. There's always a face is always going to kind of, there's always, oh, where did you come from? Or where are you from? Well, actually, I live in Japan. I live in Tokyo. And where are you from? Well, I haven't lived in my home country for, since I was 22. So this is home. There's this kind of that as well, I think, plays into our mindset a little bit. But I always had this idea, well, maybe we'll move back. My husband likes New Zealand, who knows? But as you get older and start seeing, your time is finite. My husband, as I said, is heading for retirement probably at the end of the year. Obviously, that window of opportunity closes, and you begin to be practical. So I think on a practical level, probably we will be based here.
Mhm.
That said, I have two daughters in New Zealand. I mean, if down the line they decide to stay, um, both of them have partners who have got other nationalities as well, and might wish to move. In fact, all three of my kids have got quite international, just around the six of them. So I don't know quite where they're going to end up based. But if I have, say, one child based in New Zealand, that would make it more, obviously, more attractive to live there. But at my age, moving back to New Zealand and starting a life at this age might also be tough. Um,
True. Good
Maybe
point.
I'm looking at it with rose-colored glasses. My partner can move back with me. My husband could move back, but obviously health issues and stuff. We have it very nice right now with the Japanese medical insurance here. He's in a
Right.
situation where he needs that for his health. He's doing well, but long term he needs that as a backup. So there's many practical things to consider too. So I think people like us, when we caught between two cultures, we need to make a decision at some point and let go of that. Oh, maybe I could go back, kind of dream, or that kind of that thing that's always playing in the back of our minds. So on a practical level, I mean, Japan, obviously the population is aging. People keep talking about the Nenkin not being as great as it would have been. We obviously have to have savings. That's all part and parcel of it. But I think, again, having that community, once you get older, you need to really make sure that you have people around you that can support you. So, for me, it could be that the AFWJ, it could be my Japanese friends. I don't have family here. My husband's family are all in Hiroshima. So it's probably my friendship groups. And I think having a solid place and feeling at home in Japan is very important. If you've never really set roots down here and then you attempt to retire here, I think that could be quite difficult. And perhaps also taking things with a grain of salt. Japan is not perfect, but neither is New Zealand, neither is the US.
Right.
If you're happy and have a stable income and friendship and your health to a certain point, I think you can probably be happy anywhere. But at some point, you've got to kind of be realistic. And if you're going to make it Japan, then you need to make sure that you have everything in place, I think, before you retire. I would like to be able to shout out to Retire Japan. I'm not sure if...
Yeah, absolutely. Great resource.
Yeah, Ben Tanaka's group is fantastic, really helpful. Another thing about retirement, there was one thing I wanted to say. If I can think of what it was. No, it's I think just getting yourself financially set is probably the big one there. But also being realistic, people are still probably going to be asking us when we're in our 70s and 80s, oh, where did you come from? We've lived like
True.
3/4 of our lives in Japan. You have to just sort of take that, don't take it personally. It does.
Exactly. I'm used to that.
Yes,
Too.
I think we all are. But yeah, building a home and realizing that you can be happy anywhere is a key, I think. I think the pandemic, when Japan was like, had that, Japanese can come in and out, but foreigners cannot. As permanent residents, we could live here, but if we'd gone back home to see an ailing parent, you and I would not have got back in.
Right.
I was quite angry. Well, I was very angry. I was very upset. Like the virus. Oh, you're Japanese. I'm not going to affect you. You're a foreigner. I'll affect you. I mean, just a year before it was, the Olympics is coming. Welcome to Japan. And then suddenly, you're a foreigner. You can't come back in. I had friends who couldn't go back home for the funeral of their parents, or
Oof.
one who did go back and got stuck and couldn't get back in, or had businesses and children here. Business visas and holiday and tourism, of course, they shouldn't be allowed in. But people who have paid taxes, built their lives, and have permanent residence, or business owners who are contributing to the economy, people with children, real estate, employees, and students as well, who had given up everything to come and build their lives here to study. No, that was really bad. Japan really, really let themselves down with that. And I think that was just how quickly Japan can pivot to when things when the custard hits the fan. You know what I was going to say. When things turn to custard, how quickly Japan can pivot. Close ranks. If you're not Japanese, you're a foreigner. We get that a lot too. I think even in long-term position we're in. Of course, there's so many tourists right now in Tokyo. People often think you're a tourist, so which can be good as well. But yeah. But
I hear you. I completely commiserate with that. By the way, a lot of our listeners have told me that they're very interested in speaking with people like you to learn a little bit about some practical things about how to get started in Japan. And some are thinking, you've obviously been here like me a long time, but just getting your foot in the door, what are some practical things you can do to get started here?
Well, I'll have to, as a caveat, I've been here a long time. Japan has changed greatly. So my experience will not be the experience of someone who is in their 20s now. But I would say the biggest thing is if you're really if you're serious about building a life here, learn Japanese. And I have to say, a lot of the young people coming are very good about that. I think in my day, I have friends, or perhaps friends a little bit older than me, perhaps half a generation ahead of us. Some still don't speak very good Japanese, which I find absolutely mind-boggling, because how do you live in a country all these years? Maybe the partner of their husband or their wife spoke English. They were perhaps working in academia or in a situation where they could. Perhaps they were more in the expat community rather than Japanese community. They went to international school, but that model is pretty much no longer the case. So you really do need Japanese, and I think a lot of young people are learning Japanese and picking it up. But you can't really get by in Japan long term unless you have a good grounding in the language. I think that's very important. Of course, writing Japanese is also great if you can manage it, but that takes more time and effort. But Japanese is not a difficult language to learn. It's really not. The grammar is so much easier than English. So I think making an effort to learn Japanese, whether it's there's so much online. You can do Duolingo, you can go to a language intensive course, you can do online lessons with somebody. There's many ways to do it. I would say they'll have a mindset of abundance. This is not my phrase. I interviewed a woman, a photographer actually, who's built a successful business, and she used that this mindset of abundance. There's many opportunities, so a lot of writers tend to kind of play their cards close to their chest. They don't share resources, but I've done really well from other people generously sharing with me, and I in turn try to share with other people. So in my field, a lot of freelancers, we're all in the same boat. If I can't cover something or can't do something, I might give the name to the client of somebody else, because I've benefited the same way from other people generously sharing, job opportunities with me. So I, don't think that you're the only one. If you have to guard everything, there are different opportunities, there are different ways to get ahead, and building a community, I think, is also very important. Find your tribe, whether it's other parents, other people in the same situation as you. Tokyo is especially a pretty diverse society. That's not always the case, of course, in the smaller provincial areas. But, there is the online community now, and there are many groups out there where people can find information. So I think those would be my 3 takeaways from that.
Yeah, that's very practical. Say, by the way, I just spoke with a young gentleman in the United States in his mid-20s who's contemplating, very interested in Japan. He's studying Japanese, curious about job opportunities, but he's a little worried about salary levels over in Japan. And
Yeah.
what's your take on that? Is that something to just suck it up and try it anyway, or what?
If you want to come to Japan, I mean, what can you do? Yes, you will have to suck it up. You unless you have some very unique skill that everybody wants, you cannot just waltz in and say, "This is what I want." Salaries are low here, but so is the cost of living. Yes, when I came to Japan, the yen was super high against the New Zealand dollar. You could feed a whole family for a nice meal for the price of a cup of coffee in the Ginza when I started working in my coffee shop. Now you could feed a family of 4 Japanese people on a nice meal for the price it would probably take you to have a casual lunch for 2 in a New Zealand cafe.
Right.
Of course, the US and Europe as well. Yes, salaries are not high here. And I really feel that in my freelance situation, because some of the clients I've been working for have not raised the amount of money I'm getting in many years. I'm pretty slack about also. I'm not very good, I have to say, at starting conversations about salary. And when people ask me, well, salary about, in my case, it's not salary; it's usually project based or hourly based. But when people come to me and say, how much would that be? I'm like, how much is it? And I think for people my age, that might be an issue. I think people who are a little bit younger are a little bit more business savvy. I've found that with other writers around my age. We're always like, yeah, how much do we charge? I'm not sure. Would you do it for this? Whereas people maybe 15, 20 years younger than me, perhaps in their 30s, are a lot more conscious of that. And they're a lot savvy about saying, this is what I'm worth and this is what you're going to pay me. And the clients appreciate that. So I think that's one area when we sometimes let ourselves down by not giving ourselves our true worth. I mean, if you can get someone for a certain rate, you're going to hire them, right? You'll hire them for the cheap rate. Japanese companies are often, on a tight budget, so they need to find the best fit. So if that's the cheapest person, then fine. Yes, I made a right call.
Okay. Well, I think I
Exactly.
certainly agree with you on
I
that.
need to do that. Like, I don't have a website. I'm a little bit tech. I wouldn't say I'm a tech phobe. I'm not scared of technology, but I'm not exactly the first person to adopt any new technology. I don't even have a website. I haven't bothered, because up to now I've always managed to, people come to me and I've never had to make one, but I thought it would be nice to have one as a site for my stuff. So yeah, there's things I think I could have done differently looking back if I'd known how my career would develop. But it's interesting. I do get a lot of people coming to me from different things I've posted, and so having it out there online obviously helps. But the salaries are low. If back in the day, like 30 years ago, people coming on JET and those programs it was a good way to get into some kind of job overseas, like an overseas experience, and get well paid. It's not anymore.
Yeah.
It's no longer the gig it was. You really have to look at it as a chance to come to Japan and have something set up for you and a little bit of money while you're perhaps traveling, getting to experience a lifestyle, seeing what else you want to do with your life. So I think the way of looking at it is different how it used to be.
Okay.
Yeah,
Good.
many people our age came on jet and started their career that way. But
Yeah.
also, I think it's not just English teaching is the bottom has fallen out of that. You really need other
Right.
skills. Yeah. So,
Great.
do
Okay.
do we want to open up for questions, or if anyone has questions? I
I
don't know.
do. I do. But before we do that, I would just wanted to conclude our discussion, and this has been terrific. You've been very honest and shared a lot of personal details. So thank you. You are the consummate traveler, and
Oh
I
yeah,
enjoy reading your travel pieces in particular.
thank you.
I know this week you back in Shikoku, I think. But can you tell us maybe some hidden gems that maybe people outside Japan wouldn't be familiar with? Maybe give us two great spots, if you wouldn't mind.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, a whole area that a lot of international tourists or even people in Japan don't get to very much is Tohoku. I
Ah,
absolutely love the Tohoku area. This is the area north of Tokyo before Hokkaido. So it's 6 prefectures. Starts with Fukushima. Sometimes a couple of other prefectures are lumped in there, but generally it's 6 prefectures from Fukushima up to Aomori, and then after that you're heading into Hokkaido. So it's a northern part of Honshu, the main island. It's got everything. It's got beautiful nature. Each one has interest in culture, folklore, uh, great food. I'm a vegetarian, so the meat and the
mm,
fish do much for me. But if you're into meat and fish or noodles, all kinds of apples, fresh fruit, um, and the people are among the warmest in Japan. They really are. It's the part of Japan that a lot of tourists don't get to, and it's a place where you really do need a car to explore a lot of the area. But there's a fantastic thing called the JR East Pass. It's
ah,
similar to the Japan Rail Pass. It's for that part of, of Japan, and it's a 5-day consecutive pass, so you have to use it all up
ah,
and. But it's a really great way for connecting the main stations and getting to the main parts, and then you could perhaps supplement that with rental cars just here and there to, go out into the countryside and explore some of the other stuff. So that Rail East Pass, sorry, JR East Rail Pass is
yeah,
thirty
good
thousand yen.
tip.
It's a
Oh,
bargain.
okay.
The price went up recently, but it's still a bargain. And the great thing is, foreign people like us living in Japan can use it too. So unlike
Ah,
other
that was the
passes,
next question I had. Yeah,
yes, most of them are limited to tourists. You need a tourist visa to use them, or a short-term visa, right? I think people like us who can use them too. So any foreign passport holder. So if your foreign friends are coming from overseas, you can go travel with them, or
that's great.
don't wait for your foreign friends to come. Just go travel yourself.
That is a really good tip. So thank you
And
very much.
the other
Tohoku.
area
Okay.
that I do love Kochi. I love the Kochi prefecture a lot. The Nyodo Blue area is gorgeous.
Hmm.
Uh, And my husband's from Hiroshima. I did spend time in Hiroshima, so I'd like to give a shout out to the Setoichi area, which is kind of those prefectures along the Seto Inland Sea. I particularly love Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi is, I just think it's a little unexplored. Again, people don't really get there. A lot of people go to Hiroshima for Hiroshima City and me, obviously, because of the connection that the
Right.
world peace is an iconic place. Yamaguchi, that's right next door. Very beautiful prefecture. So yeah, those are kind of my favorite areas. There's many things I don't know yet. I haven't really explored Hokkaido too much. There's a lot about Kyushu I don't know yet, but
Come
Tohoku
on
and the
down.
are my favorite. Yeah,
Very good. Okay, well, that's terrific information. So thank you, and we'll put that in the notes when we send out a recorded version. We're right at the end of our discussion, and frankly, I don't see any specific questions that have come in. But if you have a question, please feel free to write it, and hopefully we'll
sure.
figure out how to view it online. If not, we'll try to get to your questions afterwards. And while we're waiting for that, how do people continue to follow your work?
Yeah, well, I don't have a website, so and I'm not very active on WhatsApp. Really, only joined it so I could stalk my kids. I mean, follow my children on there. Uh, my work is pretty much all online. Really, most of the pretty
Okay.
much all publications I work for, it's out there. So
Okay.
I
So I know on the Japan Times, for example, you can filter by author, and all of your
right,
work is
right.
listed out there.
Some of them, of course, do have a paywall on them. Usually get 1 or 2 articles free.
Right.
So yeah, I should probably start my website. I think, but maybe that's my this year's goal. But yeah, I think I'm not terribly active on social media apart from my own Facebook and now and then on Instagram. Maybe I'll start a Substack.
There you go. All
But yeah,
right.
everything's out there. Pretty much all my stuff is out there. The things connected to parenting are probably mostly on the Japan Times and on Savvy Tokyo, which is a free website. So if
Good.
you're interested in
Okay.
some of those, I actually wrote a column for them for a few years called Been There. I think we called it Been There, Done That, but kind of looking back as a seasoned mom. So there's a lot of stories on there that are available for free. But yeah, all my travel stuff, there's many platforms that I've written for. It's pretty much all out there.
That's great. Okay. Well, we have quite a few very positive comments coming in here, such as Louise, I'm such a fan. Obviously, somebody that reads your work. Let's see here. Work 5 to 9. Oh, here we hear the Japanese announcement of noon going on in the background. Yeah, lots of very positive comments here. Let's see. Also, one of our listeners was very pleased that you commented about how you're handling working with your mother on a long distance basis. Yeah, that's a challenge for many of people in our age group. Okay, a lot of companies. Wow, we have quite a few comments. Let's see here. Okay.
Does anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, you can
sometimes feel
scroll,
like I don't know
Louise.
how much to say. I tend to
If
talk
you look on,
a lot.
if you look on your screen, you can scroll down at the
Right.
bottom. You can see there's some.
Yeah, there's no specific question, so I think just yeah, I think there's a comment about other people also found the pandemic shutdown when Japan was very much closed. They also found that very difficult and an unfortunate time. Yes. Oh, hi, Martin. Paulie's from Buffalo. Oh, great. I'm wondering part about. We lived in. If you're still there, Martin, I lived in Williamsville for 3 years. Yeah, the Amherst-Williamsville border, just near the Tops on Transit Road. I'm sure you know what I mean.
Very local information.
I went to
All
City.
right.
So yeah. All right.
Well, here's another great comment while you're reading this over. Big fan, and though I guess met a few times, this is the first time I've really gotten to hear you so extensively. You're great. Thank you. So there are a number of comments like that. Thank you very much. That's very generous.
9. Yes, I understand. Teresa's another mom who's been there, done that. Yeah, and people's parents passing. It's. I think it sounds like a lot of the people here are in a similar stage of life.
Yeah.
I made a rate card was the hardest thing ever. Yes, I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Okay. Well, I tell you what, it's time to conclude the call, but we will be putting out the recording. Give me maybe a day or so to get that done. But at that point, first of all, the discussion today probably was a little difficult for our viewers in Europe to listen to since it's the middle of the night, but they'll have a chance to listen to the recording. And we'll also put out one more version on YouTube as well. And I'll put the links in the notes sent out to Substack. Louise, thank you so much for joining us for an hour and sharing your personal experience. I mean, this is really practical information, but also from the heart. You shared a lot of personal details, so it was quite useful, I imagine, for many viewers. And also for me, another fellow real Gaijin who's been here for a long time and intends to stay here permanently. You're inspiring, and I enjoy reading your work. So I'm going to continue my Japan Times subscription and reading in other venues.
Thank you. The Japan Times will be forever in your debt. No, seriously.
Okay.
Newspapers need all the subscribers they can get. So yeah. Paulie, I was there from in the 90s, 95 to 99. So yeah, I really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm glad we were able to make it happen this. So thank you everybody who joined. I was a little nervous about that anybody would join at all. So
we have quite a few.
I hope it was interesting or at least informative. And I thank you, Mark, for providing this opportunity.
My pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening. I will follow up, as I promised, with a recorded version. So we'll sign off for now. Louise, have a good day.
Great, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
お疲れ様でした。
Thanks for watching and or listening to another story from the Read My Lips series of podcasts on Real Gaijin. Tell us what you think and be sure to tune in again next time.